There you go.
And good evening, and welcome to the December 8th, 2020 meeting of the Stow Board of Selectmen.
Yes, Courtney.
With me here in person, I have Ellen Sturgis. Jim Salvi will be here any moment. And virtually, we have Megan Birch-McMichael and Courtney Fresher. So, I'll start off with public input. Is there any public input? If you have some, please raise your virtual hand or wave at me, and I will recognize you. Hearing none, I will move on. For Chairman's comments, first thing I have is that the Stow Police would like to remind everybody that the winter parking ban started on December 1st, and there's no parking on any of Stow streets between 1 a.m. and 6 a.m. And if you have problems because your car's broken down or something like that, you can call the police department and let them know, and they will possibly grant you clemency. This Sunday, December 13th, the Stow Firefighters Association will be escorting Santa around on a driving tour of Stow from 10:45 a.m. to about 3 p.m. This year, Santa will be setting a good example and observing social distancing rules, so he will not be able to stop and give out candy canes or take pictures. Instead, Santa will be slowly driving by. Santa's schedule was in last week's paper, and you can follow Stow Fire on social media or visit the stowfirefighters.com for live tracking on Sunday. Sadly, our former administrative assistant to the Board of Selectmen, Susan McLaughlin, recently passed away. Susan worked for the town from September 2004 to January 2013 and will be missed by her friends and family. My deepest condolences to those who knew her and worked with her, and please keep Susan and her family in your thoughts. If we could just have a moment of silence in memory of Susan, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
You might need to speak up a little bit.
Okay. As most of you know, tonight's meeting of the Board of Selectmen is our last regularly scheduled meeting for 2020. Needless to say, 2020 has been a somewhat challenging and disconcerting year for all of us. However, even during these trying times, we have managed to persevere and continue to move forward. Our annual town meeting and election were eventually held under difficult circumstances. Our longtime town administrator, Bill Wrigley, retired after 27 years, and we hired our new town administrator, Denise Dembkoski, who is working out quite well. We had a presidential election full of drama, and in the near future we will also be appointing a new police chief. Throughout it all, the town, state, and country have continued to function under difficult circumstances and with tragic losses to many. In Stow, we continue to function due to the efforts of those whom work for the town, and I would like to thank my colleagues on the Board of Selectmen, Denise, and all the employees and volunteers who put such great effort into keeping things going. I'd also like to thank the residents of Stow for their understanding and patience until things can get back to normal. During this holiday season, I hope you and your families all stay healthy and safe, and please keep in mind those that are less fortunate and help where you can. While these are difficult times, we'll get through it together and to a better 2021. All right. Next up, I suppose I'll let any of my colleagues say, if you've got a message for people in town or the town employees, please feel free. You know, it's our last meeting of the year, and you guys have done a great job all year. So,
I would have just another shout out to the, everybody who was involved in the elections. There was a lot of them, and Linda and Deb in particular for making us, you know, not have all the issues that a lot of other municipalities have had. So thank you again for all that hard work.
I'd just like to say thanks to all the employees and all the residents for helping us through a really difficult year. You did not mention, obviously, the drama and controversy about our former police chief. That was a difficult period, but everybody really kind of pulled together, and there was a lot of fear and questions, but people kept it reasonable and let us and the police department do their jobs. And I think the entire board appreciated that.
Megan, any comments?
I would just like to second and third the thanks to everyone. It was obviously my first couple of months on the board, and I have just been so thrilled to be a part of this town. So thank you all, and may we have a much better 2021.
Courtney? Oh, I think you have to unmute, Courtney.
Also mirroring what others have said, I'd like to just add to what Ellen pointed out. We had an unprecedented number of volunteers for the election, to help with the election, and one of the things I love about town is volunteering and being part of the group of volunteers, and I just commend everyone who stepped forward, and I thank everyone that I know through volunteering here.
Well, thank you all, and to a much better 2021. Next up, appointments. We have a request to appoint Greg Troxel as a perambulation alternate. I think you wanted to bring this up.
Yeah,
Ellen?
it just, I mean, we didn't do it initially because everybody was interested in helping out, but it would just be easier, especially as the weather's turning, to have Greg, who sort of is a core to this team because of his GIS experience, not to mention how many times he's actually perambulated with different people over the years. So it would be nice to have him officially as an alternate, so that if we do need to go out, we basically, like last week, we were like, oh, weather's good, it's not gonna be good on Saturday, let's do it. And so it would be nice to have him officially one of the team.
My recollection is that he's been involved in this probably for well over 10 years, probably.
At least 2006, he was involved in, and I'm not sure if that was his first year or not, but yeah.
So I agree with that. Any other comments or discussions from the board?
I'm happy to make a motion.
I'm willing to take a motion at this point.
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint Greg Troxel as perambulation alternate for the Selectmen's 2020 perambulation of town boundaries.
Amendment 20 to 21.
And I will accept a friendly amendment for the Selectmen's 2020 to 21 perambulation of town boundaries.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? Megan, Courtney? All right. All in favor? Aye.
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 That was Courtney, aye, and Megan, aye. And so it's unanimous. Next up, appointment of Gregory Boutwell as position of a per diem snowplow driver.
Yep.
Denise?
So Steve has recommended him, and I support the recommendation to appoint Gregory as a per diem plow driver and laborer. He comes to us from a number of different positions and was most recently in the U.S. Army National Guard.
Do we have any other comments from the board?
I wanted to make, and not specifically, not to change this motion, but I would like to suggest that maybe we authorize our town administrator to make these appointments going forward for per diems, because it seems like we don't know anything about these people, and that, from my understanding, you know, Steve's been scrambling for plow drivers in particular, and with us only having one meeting, it's adding to his stress. And frankly, it just struck me, that it's like, why do these come to us as a per diem? It seems like it's a supervisor / town administrator position, responsibility.
Is there anything in the chart?
So the charter states that the Board of Selectmen appoint highway employees. He is not just a per diem plow driver, we consider him a laborer because he's using our equipment. That being said, I think you could certainly authorize me to act on behalf of the board to appoint strictly per diem, if you wanted to, but that's why it's on the board's agenda.
So why don't we appoint Gregory, since we're here?
Yes.
And then I'll make a motion to authorize you to hire per diem highway workers for the purpose of snow plowing
Yeah, that's fine.
through March.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds reasonable.
So, first motion, Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint Gregory Boutwell to the position of per diem snowplow driver / laborer.
Second.
Any other discussion? Megan, Courtney? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Megan?
Megan's frozen.
Oh, Megan's frozen.
She raised her hand.
All right. Courtney?
No, I
was unable to hear the motion, but will infer from the discussion that we're voting on that, so aye.
All right.
I move to appoint Gregory.
Thank you.
All right. And Megan, you said aye?
Yep,
All right, so it's unanimous.
So, second motion, Mr. Chair, I move to authorize the town administrator to hire per diem laborers for the highway department on our behalf through the end of March 2021.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
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 That's unanimous. Megan and Courtney were both aye. Next up is the Town Hall Restoration Committee. And I believe that they want... Doug, did you guys want to make a presentation or discussion about what you're trying to accomplish?
Tom, probably a discussion. We have information available that you may or may not have received in the form of pictures of the different locations we're talking about and the various pieces of equipment that we're talking about. But I believe I should try to stay away from getting you guys involved in making equipment decisions and focus on what your feelings would be in granting an easement or entering into negotiations for an easement on other town residents' property for the location of this equipment. As you're aware, the property line is at the foundation line of the town hall to the east, and an easement has already been granted for the accessibility ramp that goes to the basement level. And right now we don't know exactly where we would like the equipment to go. We don't know exactly what pieces of equipment we would be getting, because the numbers that have come in are pretty interesting from an energy standpoint. But in talking with the architect tonight, in a perfect world, the ideal spot would be located, you have those pictures, between the town hall and the yellow shed. But again, there's too much we don't know right now, and too many decisions that the committee hasn't made. But we didn't want to go down a path only to find out the Board of Selectmen was not in favor of entering in, having the town enter into an easement with another landowner. That picture you're seeing is option number 3. The equipment would be located just to the right of the cobblestone berm, between past the drip edge of the roof and up to the cobblestone or granite berms. It's the least desirable from an aesthetic point of view, and also we're a little concerned about how that might impact the neighbors on Crescent Street.
I'll get to the other pictures, give me a second.
You must have worked this out with Denise earlier, Doug.
Well, we try to keep all of our team well supported. This photo represents currently the architect's premier spot. Because the yellow shed offers protection, we need to get down into this corner to do some drainage work, pull the earth back, get into the foundation of the building, and eliminate that door. So it might be an ideal spot with soundproofing. It potentially becomes a non-issue, but I'm uncomfortable stating that as fact. It's what we're led to believe right now.
Megan?
I have a quick question, Doug. Has anyone reached out to the homeowner of that property?
No, we have not.
Okay.
Again, a view from the least desirable spot, looking over the wall and down, and the equipment would be located in that general area.
Helen?
Doug, when you said there was already an easement for the ramp, that's on the 117 side, is that right?
I think it's behind the, you see on the picture there?
Yeah,
There's a wooden fence.
yeah.
I believe it's right behind there because that's the handicapped accessibility area.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
that's where an easement was granted years ago to put the handicapped ramp in.
Oh, okay. Oh, is it ramp to the basement? Or-
Right, ramp to the side door on the basement, that's the only
See, I'm
accessible.
sure I forgot there was one, okay, got
Yeah.
it.
We
Jim?
don't know if the current owner was the owner at the time that easement was granted.
No,
It's not.
Doug, this is Jim. I assume you're talking about discussing with the homeowner a voluntary easement. You're not talking to us about some sort of involuntary taking, right?
that is correct.
And forgive me if I couldn't find it in these materials. Give me just a rough estimate of length of the easement, width of the easement.
Oh, I'm swatting this one out of the park. It'll be 20 by 20.
Okay. I'm not seeing a downside to authorizing the committee to start talking to the landowner about this. Is there a downside that I'm missing?
No, other than we went through the work with the landowner, came to an agreement, and you guys said, no
Sure.
way.
Right, okay. Thank you.
So, Megan or Courtney, any other comments?
I think it's a great idea to have a conversation with the homeowner, see what's possible.
I agree.
And so do I. I don't see any downside to having the conversation. And if they're amenable to working out something that makes sense, then we can move forward. So if all you're looking for is our blessing to investigate, I think you've got it.
Perfect. Where's my "that was easy" button?
Well,
And do we don't need to take a vote, do we?
I don't think so.
we don't have anything to really vote on other
Right.
than to tell them that they can investigate
Right.
an easement. And given the pile of paper I got, Doug, I expected a lot more discussion.
I was hoping you weren't gonna test us on that.
I expected you to do your homework, Tom, and so I wouldn't have to say anything.
Well, that's it. I looked at the pile of paper and I said, Doug will tell me what's in there. But, so if that's it, I think we can probably move on from this. Thank you, guys, and
Thank you very much. Thank you, committee, for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Looking at
good night. Next is the common Victualler license for 29 Culinary LLC DBA Nan's Market, 271 Great Road. And Denise, I will let you.
Sure, so, as you're aware, Nan's Market has opened. There was some confusion regarding their licenses at the time when they applied for their liquor license and their food permit. I think it was just an oversight, so they have provided their application, they have complied with all of our requirements, and therefore I am recommending you approve their license for the remainder of calendar year 20 and through December 31st, 2021.
Any comments or questions from the board? Megan's nodding no. And I see Courtney is, any questions, Courtney?
Nope, I think it's a great idea.
All right. And Jim and Ellen look like they're good. So in that case, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve a common victualler license for Nan's Market at 271 Great Road for the remainder of 2020 and through December 31, 2021.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, Megan and Courtney are ayes, so it's unanimous. And I see these all laid out. Is the plan to just sign them afterwards?
Yes.
Great.
Excellent.
That innovation alone,
We will do it socially distanced, though.
I think that should be on our
Rotate.
work plan, the first thing we check off.
Yeah.
Get us out of the dead air time,
Dead air
signing
time, there you
licenses.
As thrilling as that is, watching you pass paperwork around and sign, I figured this is a little easier.
A little easier.
Next up is the Minuteman Athletic Complex School Debt Authorization Request. We have received formal notification from Minuteman that they took a vote, I believe, on November 17th, and I believe we probably had 60 days from the date we received the letter, or the,
From the vote.
or some.
From the vote.
From the vote.
Yep.
I think everybody knows from the last, most of the details from when we had Minuteman in to talk to us. I believe it's gonna be about $18,000 a year, I think.
It's 18 in the first year and it decreases down over the 10 years.
And in order for us to take any action on this, what we would have to do is we would have to call a special town meeting.
So if I can clarify, in order to take negative action.
To take
on
any
this.
negative action, yes, thank you. To take any negative action on this, we would have to call a special town meeting in the middle of January, probably to the tune of 15,000 or north of there, most likely. And other than that, what we can do is, if we don't take any action on this, it is essentially approved by default. I believe I've got those facts straight. Is there any discussion on this, and I suppose thoughts from the board on where we might like to go with this? Ellen?
So I did confirm, since I'm their liaison, I did, ask if they had a preference between no action versus an affirmative vote. They do not. They are totally fine with us taking no action. I did want to just remind our residents that might be watching, in terms of even though it sounds like more money from the school that was rather expensive, they saved over $4 million in their construction costs, so they're using those funds from the MSBA, as well as about a little, just under $2 million of their own sort of savings that they'd put aside for additional costs. So they're taking advantage of a very low interest rate to make the most of, this is going to be funding a lot of lights and stuff for their fields, which really are in a great shape, a great position to be rented out. So they're hoping that they'll make back this money from rentals over the next 10 years. So I think it's a really great idea, and I have no hesitation, and happy to do no action, but I think it's a great thing for Minuteman.
Jim?
I think even in the best of conditions, I would be challenged to call a special town meeting for no reason other than this. And so far as I know, we have no other business reason to have a special town meeting in the middle of January. Under current conditions, I kind of can't imagine having a special town meeting for this. Normally, if we were having an annual or a special, I would certainly be in favor of putting this on the warrant. And regardless of its merits, giving people a chance to speak in favor of it, or just, kick the tires. But I just can't justify that especially under current circumstances.
Courtney?
I agree with Jim.
That's-
And I think that it's a worthy thing. Sounds like it's a great addition to fully outfit the fields with lighting and be able to rent them out. So it all makes sense to me, borrowing money at low interest rates. Certainly not against it.
Against taking no action?
Correct. Sorry for the double negative.
That's okay. Just wanted to make sure. And Megan? I think you're on mute. Yep.
No, I was. Yeah, I agree with everybody. I'm fine with taking no action. I think it's a great addition to the school. I think that it's smart to take advantage of the low rates, and so I say we move on.
And me, I'm not inclined to call a special town meeting for this item in the middle of COVID. I would probably be speaking otherwise, but I think I would have gotten voted down. So you know what? I will pull in my horns and go along with the crowd right now. That I don't think we're going to take any action on this. So
I don't think we need, the lawyer in me says if you're going to take no formal action, don't have a formal vote of no formal action.
I would agree.
I'm good with that. It's just that I wanted to make sure everybody had a chance to have their say.
Yeah.
Therefore, we will have no action on this item. All right, now we're into liquor license renewals. And the liquor license renewals we have are Stow Food and Beverage LLC, Stow Acres, 58 Randall Road, for an on-premises all alcohol. J. Melone and Sons, DBA Stowaway Golf, 121 White Pond Road, on-premises wine and malt. Nickrosz Spirits, Inc., DBA Colonial Spirits of Stow, 117 Great Road, package store, all alcohol. Ken's Liquor Shop, Inc., 8 Hudson Street, package store, all alcohol. Robert Page III LLC, DBA Butternut Farm Golf Club, 115 Wheeler Road, on premises, all alcohol. Wedgewood Country Club of Stow, Inc., DBA Wedgewood Pines Country Club, 215 Harvard Road, on premises, all alcohol. J. Salamone Enterprises, DBA Russell's Convenience Store of Stow, 390 Great Road, package store, wine and malt only. The Airfield Cafe, Inc., DBA Nancy's Airfield Cafe, 302 Boxborough Road, on premises, all alcohol. Red River Rock, Inc., DBA Red Ginger Restaurant, 117 Great Road, on premises, all alcohol. And so those are the ones that are before us at present. I believe, my belief is that these are all renewals, so it is pretty pro forma. They have provided all of the appropriate documentation for licensing.
Yep, they have all complied with the requirements, they have all successfully passed their query check. They all met the timeline to provide the documentation, so as far as I can see, all 9 of these are in full compliance and should be renewed.
Okay, so there's none that we're holding in abeyance,
None of these 9, no.
and the one on Nan's, we weren't supposed to hold in abeyance.
So Nan's, you're not voting because you've already voted to grant a license pending the ABCC. That I was just gonna ask you in the TA time
I'll
to
wait.
just approve that separately.
I'll wait.
Or just sign that separately.
What?
Do we, when I worked in Framingham, when we went for our license, we had to prove our servers had tips training. Is that required as part of, is it part of ABCC?
So it's not a requirement. It certainly could be a local licensing requirement. It is not one here to provide that documentation.
Okay.
So, I'm glad you brought that up. One of my goals, and I wanted to talk to you about it, and everybody about it, in the context of the work plan, is to have more formal policies around liquor licenses. And I hadn't been thinking so much about these, although that's a great idea, but about the special one-day liquor licenses, who are we gonna give those to, who aren't we gonna? A lot of the neighboring towns have written policies about it. And I just wanna kind of put that on somebody's radar screen too. And if we can augment our server with something like that, I'd be in favor of that.
I mean, I think there's a requirement to have, your servers have to have tips training. It's just whether or not you have to provide it at the time of your license, which, given, you know, some places turn over a lot, it's maybe not realistic, but
Right.
Framingham had a particular kind of training they required, which was over the top. But I do think it's important to maybe just include it as language in the licenses. And, you know, I am certifying that all my staff will be tip certified.
I would think it wouldn't impose much of a burden on the businesses, because they're gonna do that as a condition of the insurance anyway.
Right.
It would just be doing our due diligence and getting evidence of it.
Well, at least getting certified to it.
Yes,
And then
right.
if they lied on it, then
Right.
it would be grounds for pulling the license, that's all.
Yes.
Are you ready for a motion, Mr. Chair?
Megan, Courtney, do you have any comments?
Just, I concur, I think it's a healthy thing to, you know, have that certification, and there's not, I agree that having it be part of the licensing is not shouldn't be burdensome.
I'm willing to entertain a motion then.
Mr. Chair, I move to renew the town's 2021 liquor licenses for the following businesses and approve the release of said licenses only upon a satisfactory inspection by the building department. Stow Food and Beverage LLC, Stow Acres, 58 Randall Road, on premises, all alcohol. J. Melone and Sons, DBA Stowaway Golf, 121 White Pond Road, on premises wine and malt. Nickrosz Spirits, Inc., DBA Colonial Spirits of Stow, 117 Great Road, package store, all alcohol. Ken's Liquor Shop, Inc., 8 Hudson Road, package store, all alcohol. Robert Page III, LLC, DBA Butternut Farm Golf Club, 115 Wheeler Road, on premises, all alcohol. Wedgewood Country Club of Stow, Inc., DBA Wedgewood Pines Country Club, 215 Harvard Road, on premises, all alcohol. J. Salamone Enterprises, Inc., DBA Russell's Convenience Store of Stow, 390 Great Road, package store, wine and malt. The Airfield Cafe, Inc., DBA Nancy's Airfield Cafe, 302 Foxborough Road, on premises, all alcohol. And Red River Rock, Inc., DBA Red Ginger Restaurant, 117 Great Road, on premises, all alcohol.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And Megan and Courtney vote aye.
So I had just one follow-up, which I had written a memo in the packet, and I don't know what, I hadn't talked to anybody, so I don't know what the reaction was, but when we talked about the rates for this coming year, we had a discussion about and we did reduce them because of the, sort of the burden that this year has put on businesses, small businesses in particular. And I was wondering if there was interest in considering if any of these restaurants particularly were going to be closed because of COVID, if they were not able to reopen because of lack of business, would we consider prorating their annual fee? And I got no skin in the game. I just thought it's another thing to consider for the, as a way to support the very few businesses that we have, the restaurants.
Yeah. I suppose one of the things that I'd say right now is, I think we've already, I suppose I should start it with, I'm not sure that because that's not on the agenda specifically, it's 100% appropriate. I wouldn't want to take a vote on doing anything like that tonight because it isn't on the agenda. But, because it is so related, I think maybe we can work it in a little bit. But because we have already given them a break this year, personally, I don't think any more is appropriate. At the end, towards next year, maybe the folks that have struggled, maybe we do it again. But that's my 2 cents worth. Jim? Would you, if you want, we can bring it up as an agenda item, at one of the next meetings or something like that.
So I took the question as, is the board interested in discussing it? And my answer is yes. But from the memo, my concern, I don't think it's a bad idea. I think it's a good idea. My concern is administrative, because the selectman and TA's office is the one who would be administering this, for lack of a better word, rebate program. That means Denise and a player to be named later would be doing it. And if we were to do it, and so I guess when it comes back, maybe we could have it in the form of an application process from the restaurant owners. They have to apply, they have to affirmatively step forward as opposed to our office calling them all up.
Oh, right.
And they would have to apply in arrears, maybe in June and December, and say, hey, I was closed, I like the parameters you had, at least 30 days, because of COVID, not because I took off on a vacation, but because of COVID. And I'd like you to consider a prorating. That avoids us chasing them, doing refunds. So if we're going to discuss it, which I'm certainly happy to do, I prefer to see it discussed with those parameters.
Courtney?
As often what Jim just said makes a ton of sense to me. I think having a program where such businesses would apply to us just takes the weight off of us to make it happen. I think it's worthy conversation. I think it's a kind thought, Ellen, and I think there may be businesses that perhaps any cost, it would be nice to produce that. If they're really closing because they just can't make it work because of COVID. So I'd be happy to have the conversation, and also don't think it's a bad idea.
Megan?
Again, the same as everyone else.
All right. In that case, I suggest that sometime in January, we will put this on the agenda. Is that
Thank you.
suitable?
See if Denise had any thoughts on this? We talked briefly about it.
No, I mean, my concern would be that if there is an application process, which I would agree that that's a better approach, but it needs to be done in time that, because this is general fund revenue, that it would have to be requested and refunded prior to June 30th. So perhaps it's a June 1st deadline and December 1st deadline or something to that effect. But I'm happy to support, obviously, the board's wishes and whatever will help to improve our businesses, as long as it's not an administrative nightmare.
Right. Okay.
Why don't we try to flag that probably for the second meeting in January? I got a feeling that the first meeting might be kind of full after taking a month off. All right.
Okay.
And up next is the presentation of the finalists for the police chief position. And I will let you take that away, Denise.
Thank you. All right. So the Police Chief Search Committee has wrapped up our process and is ready to present you with our 3 finalists for the position. As we previously mentioned, we received 31 resumes. We initially narrowed it down to 13 based on qualifications and experience. And then from those 13, we submitted written questions. We reviewed those responses and invited 5 candidates in to meet with us in person Saturday during the nor'easter. We interviewed those 5 candidates, and the committee discussed the candidates at the conclusion of that, and we were unanimous with our top 3. However, the committee felt that it was not in the town's best interest to rank those candidates. I personally feel it does a disservice to the town, the board, and the candidates to have a ranked submission given to the board. If you'll recall, I was not ranked number 1 in the town administrator search, and I quite candidly thought about withdrawing. I think it creates uncertainty, and obviously this board has the ultimate decision, so we felt we would present the candidates to you in alphabetical order. And I do have packets for both of you this evening. So our 3 finalists are Richard Briggs, a lieutenant from the Ashland Police Department; Edward Lee, the former police chief from the Hopkinton Police Department; and Michael Salisi, our acting chief detective sergeant from the Stow Police Department. So I have their resumes and their information for you, and look forward to the process that you are going to take. So if you have any basic questions on the process, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, we can certainly discuss your timeline and how you would like to move forward with the process.
I had kind of hoped to try to get this done before the end of the year. And given that it's, Denise and I have talked about it a couple times, I think I've mentioned it before. It's probably a Saturday meeting. The setup that we had down at the community center, I think it was very well set up, conducive to social distancing, shall we say. Denise had everything very well set. And, given that we'll probably have interviews for an hour each and then discussion afterwards, I'm thinking a Saturday might be the best way to go. We can get it done and, start at 8 and hopefully be done by noon, 12:30, something like that. But that's just a concept right now. It's either that, That, or we end up having the meetings, you know, on an evening and try to get 4 people in here between like 6 and, or 3 people in here between 6 and 9, and then be here till 10. I think, you know, those are my thoughts right now. I think we've probably got, I think probably this coming weekend is a little short notice, so it would probably end up having to be the 19th. Can't do it?
I'm driving down to get my daughter instead of having her fly, so we're driving to East.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? What is the likelihood that we'll, this is a completely unfair question. What is the likelihood that we'll lose one of the candidates if we politely explain that we have to kick this to the first week or so of January?
So quite candidly, we did not relay any process to the finalists. So I don't think you would lose anybody. Actually, and all 3 of them I can see are on the Zoom, so they are listening to this conversation. I think given the holidays and given where we are, it would make sense to push it off till after the first of the year.
Because I applaud your target, but if this goes to January 8th, I'll give you that. I'll say that you made your target.
No, that's it. I just wanted to put all things on the table, and actually the Wreaths Across America is on the 19th, so it wasn't an ideal day for me either. And I really do think that between now and Saturday would really be pushing it, because it is coming up on the holiday season, and I'm sure people have things to do.
And if we did it on Saturday, January 9th, we then have our first meeting that following Tuesday where we could vote.
Which is almost exactly what we did with the town administrator, so that's a good point. Can I ask one thing we struggled with briefly in the town administrator search I'd rather get out of the way, is the whole issue that people have different opinions about. Should you have prepared questions and stick to the questions like a script? And should you have score sheets and criteria? I will tell you, I'm not a fan. I am a fan of prepared, suggested questions, but I'm not a fan of sticking to it like it's a script. And I am a fan of criteria to consider. But in high executive positions like this, it always comes down largely to guided gut is what I call it. You know, that you should know, but that's just me. I minimize the mechanical aspect of it.
So I will give you in the packet, I will provide to you, just so you are aware of the questions that we asked, both in writing and in person. In our in-person interviews, we had 7 standard questions that we asked of all candidates, and then we had a few that were specific to the individual candidates, and then obviously it was fluid. So as questions came up, follow-ups came up. I think you should have a few key questions that are similar so that you do have some way to compare candidates. But I also think that you, after reviewing resumes, you may have individualized questions that are either specific to the candidate, specific to the position. And I think you certainly could have a ranking. You know, I can show you what we did. I had a whole ranking system where every question is ranked and there's a follow-up at the end of presentation and demeanor and things like that. Quite frankly, we didn't need it because we were all in agreement with the 3 that we identified.
Right.
So, however, I can certainly prepare something for you. If you'd all like to submit questions to me, I can consolidate them. The problem is that we will not have a meeting before then unless you schedule a pre-meeting to finalize the process.
If you've got your sample questions in there, I'm okay with that. I just wanted something as a guide, and I want to have a discussion about the script issue. Every interview I've ever done with a group that comes up.
I would recommend that if you are meeting on the 9th, that the board meets at 8, and then you
Yeah.
start the interviews at 9, so that you have a good hour to have sort of this conversation.
Okay.
As I said, if you all want to provide questions to me, I can consolidate them,
Okay.
and then you can that morning decide which ones you want to ask and in what order and how you want to ask them.
Okay.
And then have your own questions. Obviously, both Megan and Tom were in this process with me. I would assume they will mostly take a back seat because they've obviously now been through 3 rounds. So it'll ultimately be the other 3 of you getting the information that you want to know out of these candidates.
And this is open to the public as well, right?
It is, yes. So obviously, the first hour would be executive session.
Yeah.
And then once the interviews start, it would be open to the public.
Megan?
Can I, sorry, I just want to ask one quick question.
Yes, Megan.
Can I?
I think your
Your-
connection's breaking up.
There we go.
Thanks, so I do want to, I would like to put, okay, how about now?
A little bit better. Now you're on mute. Yep.
Okay. I do want to put forward the idea that we solicit some resident feedback on questions as well. I think that it was incredibly invaluable to have Zach on our
You're breaking up again.
Can you try turning off your video?
You're breaking up, Megan. Can't hear
She
anything.
said it, she got me.
So I think she was relaying while we're working on that.
She was doing things completely different. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Try again.
Now you're on mute. Oh,
You know what? Forget that. It's fine. It's fine.
I can relay, so I think what she's trying to say is having Zach on our committee as a resident brought up a completely different set of questions, things that we didn't think of. So I think putting it out there, I think not unlike what you did with my position, and seeing if people have questions they want to submit. Again, I can consolidate them all to present to you that morning, and you can go through and review them.
Yeah. I think so.
So we can certainly put something out there, seeing if there's any resident questions. And just a side note, the people on Zoom can hear Megan fine, so it's got to be in this building.
Oh, jeez.
So January 9th, is that Saturday, that's what you want to plan for?
Yeah.
Courtney, does January 9th, 8 to 1 work for you? Or 1-ish?
Guess they can't perambulate that. Better be rain.
Courtney, does that work for you? Maybe you can't hear me.
Here, I'll send her a
Yes,
chat.
they are
so she
losing
sees
us.
the chat.
Oh, she's moving.
Let me go back, let me do this again. Let me see if I can get on my Wi-Fi and get off the town connection. Let me-
Is the 9th?
So Hudson.
We said 8, we're starting at 8.
So 8 to 9 would be an executive session,
Yep.
and then the interviews would begin at 9.
And I think that, you know,
Let me turn on my,
what we did is we scheduled interviews for an hour, or 50 minutes each, so that we'd have 10 minutes in between each of them.
And, I mean, we can make this clear with the public. Are we going to invite them to be physically present or only by Zoom?
I would say only by Zoom, you know.
That's what I was saying, but
You know.
I think we need to just make sure people understand that it's open, but it still has to be.
Well, that's it. I'm looking at it as being an open meeting, but, you know, we probably won't, you know, unless there's something that we know or find out different, we probably won't be taking input. People will be able to go through the interview, you know, watch the interview, but that'll be about it.
Right.
So that sounds like webinar format, but that's something you can discuss.
Courtney confirms January 9th works for her. I sent her a chat. And
And-
as does Megan. So,
Ain't technology great?
whatever we need to do.
well, and I unmuted here, but now it's going to cause some interference, so,
Oh, because you're,
yes. But I was trying to use my microphone versus these setups, because the town Wi-Fi is, I think, the problem. So I will next meeting try and connect that through here and use my hotspot, so we're not using the town Wi-Fi.
I understood like 40% of what you said.
I got it.
She's gonna make it better, Jim.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotta make it better. And
It'll
then
go
we're gonna
good.
get a new Wi-Fi.
Okay, and shall I schedule interviews in alphabetical order?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We look forward to meeting you all that are on the call.
And,
Okay.
all right, I think we can move on. Next is the Education Incentive Program that Denise wanted to bring up.
Yes, so I included in your packet some information. I do want to start by saying my goal is not to affect any current employees. My request would be to grandfather all employees currently working here. But I would like to discuss stopping or eliminating the education incentive program going forward. In looking at the salaries and the job postings that are coming out of the Collins Center report, there's a number of positions now that we are requiring degrees to be part of. But yet to recognize that then separately, so we're paying folks, some folks to have that degree, and then we're giving them an incentive on top of that. I did include in the packet the 2021 estimated incentives, and you'll see that some of them we're pricing them out of the marketplace because we're over incentivizing them. And then some we are providing an incentive for degrees that don't apply to their current position. And I just don't think that's the right approach any longer. I think we should be paying for what the position is valued at, and then the flexibility of whether they have a degree or not is what step we could bring them in at. If they have a degree, if they have a master's, they can certainly come in at a higher step, but they should certainly all be on the same grade and step for that position. I think it's wonderful to have an educated workforce. I think the folks that we have here now and the folks that are getting the incentive obviously all deserve it, but I think there's a better way to handle this. And I would like to start, it feeds into the next discussion item, I would like to start that and identify that in the posting of the administrative assistant position. That not be applicable to that position. Because I just feel like we're pricing too high, given those incentives. So I'd like to have some discussion on that. I did include in the packet the initial program when it was started back in the 80s, I believe. It was adopted by town meeting, but the last sentence of the policy states that it may be changed by a vote of the Board of Selectmen, which is why I'm coming to you. Modifications will be made by the town administrator with selectmen approval over time as necessary. So I just think it's a step in the right direction to continue with the professional workforce and hire folks based on what the position calls for.
So,
I have thoughts.
discussion. Ellen?
So, this just makes me crazy. So reading through the policy that you included in the packet, I guess I was confused because the way I read it was two things that don't sound like they've been met, which was that it was based on a particular year you were going to take a class, you would get reimbursed, and that it was also supposed to be tied to your position. And it sounds like these have become permanent raises to their annual salaries. It's not about the 1 year you took a class. Is that right?
That is correct. And I will also say there is or has been some ambiguity. The policy states you have to work for a year before you get that. Depends on who's hired and when they're hired that they've been granted this. Others have been told different amounts, that it's not based on their actual earnings, it's based on their salary. So even though there's been a policy in place, it has not been followed specifically, but you are correct that these are incentives we are paying every single year
Whether
for
they're-
as long as these employees have been, as long as this policy's been in place, really.
So they're not necessarily taking classes anymore.
And, well, one of the things is, I was involved in the conversations with this back when it was put in. The intent had always, part of it was, is it revolved around a discussion where, when the Quinn bill had come up for the police. And the Quinn bill gave the police, I believe, 10, 15, and 25% bonus for an associate's, bachelor's, and then master's. May be wrong on the numbers. But the argument that was made at the time was that if the police deserved a kicker for education, so did everybody else that worked for the town. It wasn't just going to be the police. And what ended up getting put in was this particular format that gave them a 5, 10, and 15%. The police get the same thing, fire, every employee of the town, with the exception of town administrator and chief of police, I believe,
And the town accountant.
and town accountant. And, you know, I remember arguing for those, at least those positions to be excluded back, 20-some odd years ago. It looks like, from what I saw on some of the paperwork Denise provided, is it may have started around 2001. And the intent had always been that people would be paid this kicker every year, the same as the Quinn bill. It was modeled on that, but to make it equitable for the entire workforce rather than, or I should say 99% of the workforce rather than just the police. And, that was the argument. The other thing was that because this was voted at town meeting every year, if times ever got lean, this would probably be one of the first things to go. Because it would not be, it is tied to a town meeting vote. And, and the language that you saw in there, Ellen, regarding waiting a year, what it had to be is, let's say there was a new hire that came in, they wanted to collect they wanted to put in for this, they had to actually put in for it. It got budgeted for the next fiscal year. And that's what, so that it was actually a fully known number every year. It was based on their pay rate, they put in for it, it got budgeted that way. But that was the logic that I remember from way back when.
But I don't remember seeing this in terms of the dollar amount in the town meeting votes. I see it,
It's in the I believe it's in the general budget.
It's a lump sum.
I've seen it before, Ellen. Yeah, I've seen it before. I can remember reviewing the planning board budget a couple of years ago, and
It's in the individual department
doing
budget.
it then because I didn't understand.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jim?
I have a question. I kind of like the idea, I think, of the seeming fairness of having, the staff get the same treatment, whether they're police or otherwise. And I know that part of what Bill was very proud of was being able to get rid of unions union involvement in the staffing. And this is something that I feel like I really don't understand. So I'm asking a question, it may just be a stupid question. But is this sort of connected to that? So was he able to implement something which created a kind of level playing field like this, and did that aid in the negotiations of, or prevent having unionizing and lobbying against, or becoming a different force to work with around their salary and, so is this connected?
So not to my knowledge, the education incentive, as Tom said, went into effect in, I think, 2001. The union was dissolved in 2013, I believe. Back in the day with police departments, the Quinn bill was because, people were coming out of high school and getting on police departments. They didn't know how to write reports. They didn't know how to interact with people. There definitely was a purpose for it, and I do definitely understand why it was implemented on the non-police side. But again, we want many of these positions to have a degree. For instance, the town planner should have a degree, and Jesse does, but he's now getting incentive on top of that. So the pay that we're hiring should reflect the need to have a degree. Like I said, many of these positions should. The positions that don't, and again, nothing against anybody on here, but our tree warden's on here. A part-time tree warden is getting an education incentive. We have, if the custodial staff had degrees, we have one employee that has a degree in a completely unrelated field, like biochemistry, a PhD for that matter. Has nothing to do with his position here, and we're giving him the 15% increase because he has a degree. I just think it should be more specific to the positions, and we should be hiring based on what the position itself is worth, and not necessarily who's sitting in that seat.
Jim?
I have a slightly different perspective than the way we've been talking about it. I don't think Denise is proposing to eliminate the educational incentive. I think she's proposing actually to institutionalize it by rolling it into the positions. Yes, she's also saying we should narrow it to those positions that require it and degrees that are relevant to the positions. But if anything, I think she's proposing stronger basis for it. I've always thought that the analogy to the Quinn bill was a very thin reed on which to base this whole thing. I'm sure it bought some workplace peace when it first went into effect. This was a unionized workplace. But nobody who isn't in a police union would ever say that the Quinn bill was a really great idea to begin with. It lends itself to a little bit of overuse. So I actually look at this as formalizing and institutionalizing the ed incentive where it's needed and appropriate. I like it.
Well, and I would say it includes it, it takes it out of this lump sum line item. It makes salary line items more transparent because it's in there, and quite frankly, it's in employees' base pay. I mean, now they're getting a lump sum twice a year, whereas they should be getting this, quite frankly, in their weekly payroll because it's what the position is worth.
Now, one of the things is, does this also affect the police, or is that in their union contract?
It affects only, no, it doesn't affect, they're not listed in the education incentive program.
And Quinn bill's a statute anyway.
Well, the thing is, we rejected the Quinn bill. That's why this got put in.
Did we?
Yes.
Most towns have rejected the Quinn bill now. Once the state stopped funding it, most towns dropped the
Oh,
Quinn
that's
bill.
right. That's right.
Yeah, but one of the things with this is that, my understanding, and maybe I just don't know where the money is, but because it was all employees, that the police are getting this also, and the fire department. So I don't know how it's,
The police are not getting the education incentive program funding.
they're not.
The fire department it is listed that the fire employees are entitled to any education incentive program that exists. And this goes back to my sort of comment about fairness. The police chief is exempt, but yet the fire chief gets the incentive. We would want our fire chief to have a degree. I mean, I think, if we have one chief that shouldn't have or doesn't need to have a degree, why would the other one be required to? We have 2 fire employees, one being the chief, that are entitled to this. And again, that will stay in there. I think as part of the larger discussion, when when we have the Collins Center come before you and talk about the compensation study, I would like to slowly even start to take these incentives and roll them into base pay. So again, we eliminate that separate line item. That's a larger discussion. Again, not eliminating it, but finding a way to make it part of the position until folks leave us. And when positions become vacant, we will evaluate what the position is worth and post it accordingly.
But
Yeah,
if something is expressed I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
If something is expressed in a collective bargaining agreement, we're not changing that.
We're not changing that.
To the extent a collective bargaining agreement may say, and by the way, anything the town decides to give everybody else, you get too, that we're changing.
Correct.
So all she's proposing to do is to eliminate payments for degrees we don't need our employees to have.
Well, I think it really is a bigger issue than that. It's about, like, let's look at what the position is and what we need them, what their skill level has to be, and then we pay them. We have never met the policy, from what I'm seeing, that policy that was written, this is not how it was supposed to work out. So it was a backdoor way to give raises to people because it wasn't in the step agreement. So I think, my goal would be to get rid of this whole thing, go back to the idea that if there's a specific reason, the Quinn bill initially was to get more cops into criminal justice programs, right? So they'd be better trained. Clearly part of their job. If someone's taken, I would love to be paid to go take a classical music appreciation class, but it's got nothing to do with me doing my job.
Right.
So, and I think this is just not the way we should handle how we pay our staff. I don't have a problem with how we pay that we pay our staff a decent wage, but this is not the way, because it isn't handled equitably, and it's not meeting the educational incentive plan that we originally laid out. So.
Well, I actually think it does.
Okay.
I'll say.
For $144,000, rather than just saying, this is what each of those positions is getting paid.
I'm just saying that the policy was laid out, and I know I had many discussions with Bill over the years over it. If somebody came up and said, look, I want to get a master's in advanced basket weaving, he would ask, does this apply to your job? If they couldn't prove that it applied to their job, then they were not entitled to it.
I would disagree with that, Tom.
Just
I've
look at the
I've
numbers.
seen the transcript, so I know what degrees people have.
Right.
That question must not have come up.
Yeah.
But
And it's also that it's coming every year. It's not for the 1 year or 2 years that you took a class. It's from the time
right,
you got that 1 year.
and it was always meant to be. Like I say, it was modeled on the Quinn bill, and that's
Okay.
part of this.
May
Part
I
of
just
the
ask a clarifying question that's important to me? Why are we discussing the past unless we're discussing not accepting the grandfathering portion? And if that is what we are discussing, not accepting the grandfathering portion, I need to know that right now, because then I need to recuse myself.
No, I'm totally support the grandfather. It's not fair to take money away from the staff. But I think it's in terms of the context of where we're going. That's why I think it's important to talk about where we've been and how we want to over the time as we change employees, that we get rid of this.
Then, unless I've got a major misunderstanding, you and me and Denise at least are on the same page.
Yeah, I think so.
And Megan is raising her hand.
Yeah, but can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you now.
I'm gonna text this. So my question is twofold. One, if we are grandfathering everybody that is currently here, does that mean that we are continuing to pay them yearly for this educational incentive? That isn't necessarily a reimbursement on actual classes or actual degrees that are happening, but it is just basically a bonus every single year.
It was always meant to be a bonus, ongoing yearly.
That doesn't make sense to
So
me. Then
can
why
I-
was it an educational incentive?
So if I can just, can I answer your question, Megan?
Oh,
Can you hear me?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so for this discussion tonight, yes. My
I can
proposal,
hear you, yeah.
my proposal is to continue the plan as it currently exists for all grandfathered employees. The larger discussion when we talk about the classification and salary study will be, how do we take this incentive, incorporate it into the regular salaries? Because quite frankly, we paid someone to do a study for us, and that was part of their recommendation, and that will be in that, what is presented by the Collins Center.
Perfect. Thank you.
Courtney, any comments?
Yeah, I'm up to speed, and I think you've done a good thing, Denise. Thank you for bringing it up. I'm in favor of your proposal.
That's it. I remember years ago, I did fight tooth and nail against this. Eventually I came around to it. But it's interesting that I think a lot of the positions years ago were filled with people that didn't have degrees. And this was thought to bring them along. I think, a lot of the police officers, as Denise said, when the Quinn bill was first kicking around, a lot of them would come out of high school and get a job as a police officer, and then they'd go to school. Now, I don't recall seeing a police officer candidate that doesn't have a bachelor's degree. In the fire department, I think there may be more that are using this to increase their pay, and they're actually taking courses in fire science and related things, and it is a benefit to them and to the town. So, I am torn on some of it. I'm not in favor of trying to roll some of these in where it makes sense. But I am a little torn because it does seem to have worked well, and we've had a good educated workforce that has had very little turnover. And if this is part of it, it may be a good thing.
Well, if I can just perhaps persuade you. So you all are aware that Maureen obviously just left us.
Mhm.
She is making almost the same amount of money in her new position as she was making here, but because it was not her base salary, she was not happy. She did not like to look in the town meeting warrant and see that her base salary was X when she was really making Y, and she felt that she was worth the full amount in her base salary. And I think that's important, because that's how some of these positions are. You look in the town meeting warrant and their salaries show much lower in that salary range. But yet, the reality is we're paying them a higher amount because of the incentive. This plan is to take that incentive and put it in that base amount so that when they're looking at that salary range, it is true to what the position is.
Right.
And it is true to what, quite frankly, they're earning. It's just, in people's minds, they see base salary and they feel that, it doesn't matter what you get for stipends, incentives, and all that. It's base salary that people are looking at, and they feel that they're undervalued in some aspects because that's what you see in the town meeting warrant.
Yep.
So this would try and fix that issue as well. Our fire chief is on.
Yeah, could I
Chief
add a
Landry.
little tiny bit to this? I'm not sure if you have a good connection here, but.
I can hear you.
Just what Denise had just mentioned, in my 7.5 years, this has not been considered incentive for me. When I negotiated with the town administrator every single year for my salary through my contracts, it was essentially given to me that this is part of my base salary. So when I was, in the thing I look at it also, I'm in favor of the reduction of this for the most part, as long as the salaries come up to where they are, because when I would do salary surveys, which is what I was required to do just to justify any sort of increase at all, I'd reach out, and it was informed to me that I would have to include my educational incentive. And ironically, when I was even across the board, the only thing that happened to me about it was I have to wait 11 months for 5% of my pay.
Right.
I get 6% in December, 5% in December, and I get 5% for my 10%. I get 5% in June, so I have to essentially wait the whole year for 5% of my pay. When I do a salary survey of all surrounding communities or chiefs, and they're getting it in their weekly compensation. So I never considered this an incentive. It was actually just part of my salary package. And when you look at, just like she said, if you look at the town warrant, I'm easily 10% under our counterparts in Boxborough and the other communities. I'm easily under that, but I know what I'm getting. So it is, but I do have to say there is one fire department employee that is getting it. But he has an emergency management degree, master's in emergency management, and I will say that there's a lot of things that are benefits from that, and I'd like to figure out how we can accommodate somebody like that, because I can see the value of having that employee.
Thank you, Chief.
Well, hey, I think I wasn't convinced 100% the other way, so I think I'm outvoted, so I think we'll probably,
No, this is a good thing, Tom. This is.
you know, part of it is I just wanted to bring forward, you know, where it was, because like I said, years ago, I argued against it vehemently. And that's why Bill never got an education incentive, and it's why the police chief never got one. At the time, I don't think the fire chief had a degree. So,
Right.
so it wasn't something that we could say it was part of it at the time. If you look at the salary schedule that went back then, I think, you know, the fire chief was making $50,000. So, you know.
Well, and I think that's, you know, what it comes down to is like, let's post it, you know, and the transparency is like, this is what we need to pay for a town administrator or for a fire chief or a police chief. I mean, that's where it should show up. It shouldn't show up under some, you know, clump number that doesn't really mean things to people. Because, I mean, I wonder about, you know, recruiting new fire department people. If they don't know about the educational incentive, they think that's all they're gonna get, and maybe that, I don't know how, I mean, it'll be interesting to hear from Collings how it fits in, but I think for any of these positions, if that's like the experience with Maureen, I wouldn't be surprised that would happen if we post this job and it was $15,000 less or whatever. It's like, who wants it, you know? So I think the transparency is really important.
I think that's 100% true. And I remember a lot of school districts, the way their collective bargaining agreements were set up, and even individual contracts for superintendents. There's a base salary, and there are stipends for various additional duties, and then there's longevity. And you can almost never figure out
Right.
exactly what someone's actually making. And it is very frustrating, and I don't want to have that continue here.
And I will just add, I brought this up to the Finance Committee at their last meeting, and they were in support of this. This has been a bone of contention for them for many years. Mainly the separate line item and the lack of transparency surrounding it. So they were supportive of this proposal as well.
To be fair, I don't think anyone has ever expressly bifurcated grandfathering from making a change going forward. Plus, you're doing it in conjunction with this Collins study, which gives it a real rhyme and reason. That being said, Mr. Chair, are you ready for?
I'm ready for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to grandfather all current employees in the town's educational incentive program and to eliminate this program going forward.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Megan and Courtney both vote aye. Thank you for a fine discussion.
Good job.
Thank you.
And now that should make the next one even easier, right?
Yes, so the executive/administrative assistant position, I'm not even sure what the real title is. I think it's administrative assistant, but the Collins Center wrote it up as executive assistant, so.
I think we officially changed it last year
Okay.
to executive.
Okay, that is helpful. So again, I put some information in your packet. I think there has been some confusion around the position and who the direct supervisor is, what the formal chain of command is. I would like there to be clear-cut delineation of who this position answers to. I am requesting that be me. Obviously, they will provide support to the board, but through me. I think there has been some confusion, there has been some issues that I have not been aware of. They've gone from the position to the board. They've come on agendas and in correspondence that I haven't seen. I think it needs to be a little more streamlined and that I should be included just so I can, again, advise you better and answer any questions. Many times I've gotten a question from the board and I have not seen emails that have gone around or documentation about whatever the question is. So I would like to, I put in here the Collins Center drafted job descriptions. I have tweaked it slightly. I did identify in there that the oversight will come directly from the town administrator. As long as everyone is okay with that, I would like to post this tomorrow and get this out there. Otherwise, I did not change much of the job description that was drafted, I guess, based on individual meetings with employees and the Collins Center. I would like to post the job with the range that is in the town meeting warrant. But I do expect it to be somewhat to the midpoint of the salary range of what we bring somebody in at. Any comments or thoughts on that?
I think the executive, so the executive assistant is what it had moved to, as you said last year.
That's my recollection in lieu of a raise.
Yeah.
There was a change of title.
Interesting. So the one thing that I would add somewhere in it is about discretion. Often, I was actually just writing an executive assistant / office manager job description, and the distinction was when you put someone in that sort of executive role, you're explicitly saying you're going to be handling sensitive information, and I just thought it's close in there, but not exactly.
Okay.
So I thought it might help. But I totally agree on the confusion of reporting, and I think it totally makes sense.
So I don't know, there is a confidentiality section of the job description.
Did I miss it?
So just, yeah, give that a look and see if that,
So here's a question for you. Will this person be, is it FIPA exempt or non-exempt?
so it would technically be, in my opinion, an exempt position. Because of the amount of information and the work that they would handle. I will double check on the FLSA requirements has,
That's what I meant, FLSA,
yes,
not FIPA.
I know what you meant.
Yeah.
They have some, their guidelines are depending on who, if you oversee staff, how many staff. So there are some specific things that I will double check, but I believe this would be a salaried position.
But I think Ellen's suggested change about discretion would help.
Yes,
Get that
yes,
FLSA.
I can certainly make that a little stronger in there.
Yeah, I mean, it is actually, it sort of shows up in a number of those. I hadn't read those bullets.
That's
that
okay.
carefully. That's unusual. I've never seen a job description with that many separate sections, but, that works.
I would agree, but I didn't
Yeah.
put that together.
It all gets there. I mean,
May I, as a former chair, I want to say hallelujah. If there was anything that the former town administrator and I disagreed about, it was the structure of the town administrator and board of selectmen's office. He had historically the big line down the middle, and I found it to be completely impractical. That position, no matter who is in it, this is no knock on anybody who had the position, requires something close to day-to-day supervision. And it is impossible for anybody, part-time, volunteer, select person, to provide the day-to-day supervision that is required. And it also showed up in our reluctance to do public performance evaluations. This position, there's really no need for the person in this position to be reviewed in public. But if you have them report directly to the Board of Selectmen, that's implied. So I take it with this that you are knocking down the wall between the selectman's office and the town administrator's office. Why Bill did that 30 years ago, I completely understand. He had to. But there came a point when it was a hindrance, and it is a really good thing to knock that down and to do it this way. Oh, I do have one little tiny question. I don't think I saw minutes in the job description. Are you thinking about maybe having somebody else do that?
No, but I thought it was in there. If it's not, I will add it under the selectmen meetings. I will say, I am contemplating not having them attend these meetings.
Yeah.
I think now with the availability of YouTube and Zoom and things like that, they would not need to be at a night meeting unless something came up, but no, minutes should definitely be in there.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think
And
it
I will
is.
make sure that that is listed.
And here I thought you were perfect.
I don't know. I am far from perfect.
Thank you.
Megan, any comments? Nope. Courtney? Oh,
Yeah, I think this is great, and I'm 100% in favor of it.
Courtney?
Ditto.
Okay. Excellent. And I'm in favor of this. I think it's a good change. I can see why it was done years ago, but times change. So,
Good time to clarify.
Yes.
now, do you need a motion on this, or just
So, I'm
agreement?
happy to do that. Mr. Chair, I move that the selectmen support the recommendations of the town administrator and authorize her to post the executive/administrative, should I just call it executive?
Yes, please.
The executive assistant position as discussed, and I'm going to add, and to assume supervisory and managerial responsibility for the executive assistant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And Courtney and Megan vote aye.
Thank you very much.
No, I feel like the weight's been lifted off my shoulder.
And I feel like I will have more support to do my job, so win-win.
All right. And now I think we're back to you.
Back to me.
Town administrator's report.
So one of the things that I mentioned to a few of you coming in earlier, Nan's Market had some hold up with the ABCC looking for additional information on their initial application that this board approved in November. I would respectfully ask that you sign a license that I have drafted pending their approval. It will not be issued unless the ABCC approves and agrees with all of the documentation supplied. My concern is just that the board is not meeting again until January 12th, and should the ABCC come down, I would like to see them move forward with their business if they're able to. Again, it will not be issued unless the ABCC issues full approval on their request. And this is only the Section 15 license to sell beer and wine. So that is on the table if you will choose to sign that this evening. Previously, and this kind of rolls into the discussion we just had, the Board of Selectmen approved a handful of budgets, which I don't quite understand. You approved town reports, weights and measures, property and casualty, workers' comp. So going forward, those are just going to be included in my budget submission. You don't have anything to do really with the workers' comp and the property and casualty and, quite frankly, the weights and measures and things like that. So since I'm handling those policies, I will submit the budget request to you as just part of the process. So that's why they did not come before you this evening.
Jim, my recollection was we just used to say, tell Maureen, go talk to Bill about it, because we didn't know. Right,
Well, she brought it directly to us, because theoretically.
Right,
would
but then we
have
told her
that-
to go talk to Bill anyway.
That department, and it does dovetail with the discussion we just got.
Right.
So,
So that's why, if you're wondering why you're not seeing budgets, that's why. The last meeting we discussed Senator Eldridge and the plan to tour Lower Village. They came back to me and want dates from you all. He's partial to Mondays or Fridays. I told him I would speak to you. It would depend on the day and the dates on who would be available. But once we had a couple of days, I would get back in touch with him and Rep. Hogan to figure out what works best. So, thoughts on meeting and touring Ulver Village?
Megan, do you work on Fridays?
I do. Mondays are the only days that I can do.
And Tom, what's your flexibility on taking some time off?
I could probably go out for an hour or two if I need to. I can make a Monday work.
Yeah, I mean, Mondays would work for me.
Monday's good for me.
Okay.
Are we,
Breaking up again, Megan.
Before the end of the year?
Before the end of the year?
She was asking if we're trying to do this before the end of the year?
He didn't.
Are we?
He didn't really say. They just thought it would be a good time. He didn't mind the winter, but didn't necessarily say before the end of the year. Just like to get some dates scheduled to take a walking tour.
Okay. Yeah, my schedule opens up after the first of the year.
Well, and realistically, we're not gonna do it before, I would presume.
I often go to Boston on Mondays, but don't schedule, so I do have a lot of flexibility, so I'll see if I want to do it, I'll free up the day.
So I can just get back to him and say Mondays in January. I think there's probably one Monday holiday, so
Yeah.
the Mondays in January are relatively good for the board.
Yeah.
Okay. So COVID. So we have had here in Stow 25 new cases in the last 14 days. As everybody knows, there has been a spike across the country and here in the Commonwealth. And for those of you who did not see the press conference this afternoon, as of 12:01 a.m. on Sunday, the state is rolling back to phase 3, step 1 of the reopening plan. So they are scaling things back. Some of the notable changes, they're changing sort of indoor dining again. It's back to 6 people per table and not 10. One of the new requirements is if you are dining out, you must keep your mask on at all times, except when you are physically eating or drinking. So currently, you could take your mask off as soon as you get your table. That is no longer allowed as of Sunday. Mask stays on at all times. The same thing is for the gym. If you are in a gym, that mask stays on at all times. There is no more exemption for removing a mask when you're at a gym. So I would encourage people to go online, look at the changes, so that you can understand what's coming this Sunday. Additionally, sort of the 6-foot distance is no longer acceptable. Even if you are in with multiple people and you can stay more than 6 feet away, you are required, I shouldn't say required, the state mandate is that you wear a mask. So once again, if we can all do our part to stay in smaller immediate family circles for the holidays, try and avoid those holiday parties, cut back on, even shopping now, they're saying that there's an increase in cases from people being out shopping. So really do your part, wear your mask, wash your hands, and hopefully we will get through this. There is some obviously positive reports on a vaccine coming down the line, so hopefully we are, there's a light at the end of the tunnel with this, but I do ask that everyone just maintain the status quo for the time being, and hopefully we'll be there. And then just finally, a couple things that kind of goes back into some of this. I was looking through the correspondences you've been getting from your last bunch of meetings, and I wanted to see if the board in fact wants to see printed copies of emails, or if you're satisfied with some things just being forwarded. For instance, spam webinars that are printed and put in your correspondence packets. Documentation from school committee meetings that have already happened. I don't know how involved you all want to be with your correspondence. The 495 partnership, I believe you're getting these emails, otherwise I can certainly forward them. But this was all stuff that I was told that should be in your correspondence. I mean, the December 2nd school committee agenda. Well, I don't know what good that's gonna do you now. So I wanted to just kind of figure out what you want for correspondence. If you are okay with just having an email forwarded you when these items are in email format, or if you would like to have them printed and included either to review here at a meeting or in your packets.
The less paper, I mean, I obviously get the packet electronically and everything. Forwarding is perfect for me because then I can just easily, it's a little hard when it's, 50 pages of correspondence and trying to, and then some of it's duplicate. And I mean, I did sort of appreciate I don't know how she decided, but the sort of priority and low priority kind of separation. But most of the low priority stuff, I'm like, tell me it's there and I'll come find it or whatever. But
I mean, I assume you all have subscriptions to the Beacon and are getting those directly. I know she would photocopy pages of the Beacon separately.
That's not necessary.
Quick handling, I don't have time for that, so, but if that's something that you really are interested in, I can certainly identify articles in the Beacon. I'm assuming you get it all.
Personally, sometimes things get lost in my email. The one thing that I do find in correspondence on a kind of consistent basis is upcoming meetings and seminars that I might want to go to. So certainly meetings and seminars that have already passed by the date of the next board meeting, no point in having it there. But like the 495 Metro West Park, I think I saw that in the correspondence and said, oh, maybe I'll go check that out.
Okay.
I don't think I get that, but some MMA stuff, I probably do get it, but I get so many emails from the MMA that they're kind of background noise at this point. It helps to have them correspond.
Okay.
But only for things after the meeting.
Right. Now, I see like planning board decisions come down, zoning board, do you want those, or do you go on the website if you want to look at decisions?
Right.
Or do you want me to include those all in your packet?
I mean, my assumption, one of the jobs of the liaison is like, if there's something we need to know that planning board did, zoning, or whoever, we'll hear about it. And just sort of, like I get the MAPC newsletter, and I actually look through it to see if there's anything anybody else would be interested in. So I just figured that that's part of our job as liaison. I don't want to see.
I look
especially
at the
planning.
building commission stuff, the new permits, but that's just being nosy, frankly. I've got no business reason to need to see that.
Well, and I'm happy if there's a decision that would affect you, then I would certainly inform you.
Right.
So many things come to the office, and it was always just stuck in that folder, and,
I think you can use your discretion. I mean, there was a legendary battle, I think, when you were on the board last time, between the board and the assistant, about a substantive piece of correspondence in opposition to a hot issue of the day that got put in correspondence but didn't rise to the board's attention or something like that.
Huh. Yeah.
But that was a good example of, discretion possibly being used incorrectly, but I would trust your discretion. You're surprised I remember that issue, aren't you?
That's pretty good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Just trying to remember the issue?
Yeah, right. Well, no, I mean,
There was-
I actually
there were
more
plenty-
remember the characters than I remember what the issue was. But
It's a good 12 years ago.
Yeah. But I think if there's true correspondence, like if, residents are sending us emails, but to me, it's just as easy for you to forward it to me as it is to copy. But then again, it might be worth being in the packet as opposed to, all those newsletters and, reminding us of which newsletters might be out there, like 495 Partnership, maybe you want to sign up for it, because I don't get that one.
Yeah, maybe I should.
well, my feeling is that 495 Partnership is,
Maybe you got her hand up.
okay, it's like, 5 pages. Are you gonna read this in,
Yeah, right.
in paper form and go
No.
online and try, it's click here to register. I just feel like I don't even know that it's doing you anything other than to say, hey, we have this.
Right.
And this was about the,
Yeah, no, that's a good, I could use the first page.
okay, I will certainly streamline this. I just feel like this one is a eviction seminar in Florida.
Right.
You play, yeah.
All right, Megan?
I have a comment.
Oh,
And Megan's had her hand up for a long time.
yeah.
So I'm just gonna let you know that, and then, well, I'm at the floor. If you're gonna forward emails, I think what would be really useful for me is, because I get things lost in email sometimes, so if there were like a digest of some kind, so you like, I don't know if you can do that. You know what I'm saying? Instead of just, every time an email comes in and it looks like it's informational, sending it along, is there, so for me what actually worked really well was having a scan of the envelope of correspondence to just peel through myself, but I'm happy to have you remove a lot of the duff, but somehow having
I think we're losing you, Courtney.
okay, never mind.
No, I mean, I can certainly print them off and stick them in that folder if people want to come in and look through it. I don't have access to the email address that 95% of this goes to. So I was just trying to figure out what I needed to go on and print off and.
I just assumed there was stuff that came in that Maureen just threw in a pile so that we'd know that it came in, and most of the time I just scanned through it and. So, Megan, you've been waiting a while?
It's fine, I can't tell if you guys can hear me or not.
We can hear you.
We can hear you right now.
I would like to say, my question is about correspondence from residents and stuff. I feel like I would like that in a packet, just because, correct me if I'm wrong, that's public record.
Yeah, and I'm not talking anything that would come in, any letters. This is really like, I mean, to me, most of this is spam.
And then also emails,
Yes.
like that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, because I do, as the liaison rep, they always forwarded me the school committee stuff, and stuff like that came in. And I don't know, yeah. I think, again, also, if the meeting's already happened, there's no reason to put that in a packet.
Yep.
either.
Okay.
I think we'll leave it up to
I will
Denise's
streamline that
discretion.
then a little bit going forward.
Just at the risk of beating a dead horse, is there a cloud-based solution here?
Well, for the information, I mean, I can certainly, well,
Could stuff be scanned once, uploaded to a folder in Google Drive, and then we all have access to it and can look at it at our leisure?
I mean, yes, the answer, but I could certainly do it as part of the packet and just, I scanned the correspondence that we had. Most of this is in there, I think, because Phoebe gave me that packet and I included it. I just felt like,
Yeah, no.
some of it just seems,
Why don't we just leave it to your discretion? Just-
if you're feeling like you're not getting information,
Yeah.
certainly let me know, but this is just way more than I've ever given any board or that any board has wanted to see. So I just felt I should ask and clarify some of that. Okay, those are the only items I have.
All right, liaison reports. We'll start with the foreigners right now.
Yeah, see how long.
Oh, Courtney.
Okay, nothing to report on the Conservation Commission front. CPC met last night. They are in the throes of getting all their applications, and there are a few this year. So they're not sort of through them all yet. I think there are a couple more applications being presented at their first meeting in January. Then they're actually going to meet with a representative of the Community Preservation Coalition, which is like our MMA or something, a support group, to learn more about how to bond, or just for the committee to understand about bonding, the funding. So about using bonding as a mechanism to handle a larger cost. project cost. So, there was a comment last night in the CPC meeting that it might be interesting to sort of know if the selectmen have an opinion on priority of projects. And my thought in relaying this to the board is that perhaps we could have it on an agenda to have a joint meeting with CPC and just have a conversation, not to necessarily have a particular goal, but just have a conversation about if there's a way to prioritize projects or to give weight or to, keep it all balanced or something. So I think it's a moment, the context for that really is that in my tenure on the CPC, it was always sort of appropriate to just wait for projects to come, and they didn't typically seem to really exceed the budget, so to speak, or the available funding. And now, more often, there seem to be a number of projects coming in any given year, and so their job changes. They feel the weight of or the tug of different projects against each other, and I think their concern is how do they approve several projects to go to town meeting that might be competing. And so that might be, I talked to Denise about this afternoon. I mean, that might be part of the conversation, or also perhaps there's some way that the town wants to that we as the board want to like in that committee's work, because I think their job is really just to vet projects and make sure they're in good shape to go to town meeting for. And I don't think that we need to be involved in that process, but I think we do get to have an opinion about them, when they get on the warrant. But I've heard the conversation before, is there a way that we can plan about how we use our CBA funding? And I think that's a conversation to have. So it's my request. We have it.
I put a note down, and I'm sure that Denise has also.
And that's my report.
Megan,
Can you hear me?
we can hear you.
Great. So I was talking to our school committee rep, one of them today. I thought what she said is that they were meeting tomorrow. I could have gotten my weeks mixed up because there's a lot of meetings juggling. But one thing that they are going to be discussing is a hybrid model for the high school. The idea is that it will be dependent on COVID numbers, just like it is for K-8. But I think, and it's not in response to the push from Tri-Town. I think it's just that that other schools are opening, and I think that there is a way to manage. The superintendent had said that there had been a plan in their back pocket the entire time, and so I think that they're hoping to be able to move to that plan of hybrid for high school. But that's all going to be dependent on their discussions and whatever they end up voting. Tri-Town for our last meeting is tomorrow. I've spoken with Denise. We will not be attending, just like we said from the last meeting. A lot of what is on their agenda is also school committee adjacent, and the school committee, as you saw in the email that we received, will not be attending Tri-Town. So it doesn't really make sense for us to go if the people who need to be speaking about these agenda items are not going to be attending. So that is that. Town Hall Restoration Subcommittee was obviously on tonight. They submitted a proposal to the CPC. I'm assuming that hasn't been presented because I haven't heard. Courtney, do you know? There,
So that was presented last night.
okay,
Part of the conversation about having, kind of multiple, things going on is due to that, and, yeah, so I would say, it could use some, perhaps that application could use a little bit of revisiting, so.
okay. And then I haven't been able, planning board has been sort of directly conflicting with board of selectmen over the last few weeks. I did just talk to Lori. There's nothing pressing at the moment, but they are having the public hearing for the Stow House and Pizza, erosion control, earth removal, like the permit, is on the agenda next week. So I'm gonna try and attend that meeting. And that's all I've got.
Okay. Helen?
Yeah, most of my committee meetings are meeting this week, so nothing to really report. Minuteman came out with a terrific, if you can't do a tour, there's a great video that I think is a link from their website. I'm gonna send it around to the select board, but just to give you a sense of what the new school looks like, it's pretty awesome. And I was psyched, actually, something I sent on to Denise, the MAPC is sponsoring a training on the, now I'm forgetting the word, it's basically bulk testing to make it more possible for towns to be able to afford to offer testing.
Pooled testing?
Pool testing, thank you, that's the word. So actually Denise, I guess, is going to go to that training next week. So I would say MAPC is definitely cranking on a lot of really interesting workshops. So if you guys don't get your newsletters, I can pay attention more.
I've wondered why that hasn't been around more. It's been around for 6
pool,
months.
The pool testing, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they were doing that on the vineyard. It made it so much more accessible to be able to do that.
Yeah, all
so.
it basically just excludes a group.
Yeah.
Either, get 20 people spit in a bucket.
Right.
If you get a positive,
Then you go back.
then you go back and test everybody. If you don't, everybody's clean.
Everybody's good, yeah. It makes it so much easier. But there's a lot of testing things that we're not having access to because there's not a federal plan. So anyway, so I don't really have anything else to say. There's everything else is, if people are interested, the rec commission's meeting on the 17th. They haven't met for several months, so the meetings will be posted.
I think they've got a new newsletter out that's got a couple interesting things in it, too.
It didn't look like there was anything new that I hadn't
No.
already talked about.
It's probably because I hadn't seen it before, so you knew all about it.
So.
Jim?
I don't have much. Complete Streets met today. Let me remind you, town meeting approved some money, I forget how much, to hire a consultant to come up with feasibility studies on Track Road to see how we can plausibly incorporate, improve the surface and incorporate bike and pedestrian traffic with the motor vehicle access traffic. We saw the first proposal from Green International, the consultants. It needs some work. It is a very difficult thing to do, to fit bikes, pedestrians, and cars going both ways onto a 20-foot strip. But they're still working on it. Jesse's doing, I almost said Jesse and Valerie. Jesse's doing a very good job. And they're going to be bringing some other, we gave feedback and they'll be bringing some other ideas forward. Library Building Committee, the RFR is in fairly good shape. I'm encouraging the director and the building committee to have some conversations with Denise about some of the details of the procurement process that I'm uncomfortable with the committee answering or me answering, and I think Denise, as the chief procurement officer, will be the most helpful on that. The trustees themselves, though, are having some ongoing discussions about their vision for the library going forward. That will obviously have an impact on the RFR because they'll have to translate that into physical requirements. That is basically where we are. And I mentioned to Tom and Ellen before the meeting started that I went to a 495 Metro West partnership meeting at which the T gave a very thorough presentation about their proposed service cuts during the pandemic. I'd say it's fair to say no one can blame them for doing what they have to do during the pandemic. I was struck, though, by how they referred to their goal as partial restoration. At no point did I hear them say that they intended to bring back night and weekend service. I do hear that the governor apparently made a statement to that effect, which is reassuring. But personally, I'm skeptical that we are ever going to see, and I would urge my colleagues to be skeptical, that we're ever going to see the level of service that was pre-pandemic, which I think is very important. Anybody who believes in, trying to reduce carbon emissions and having transportation going forward that is less reliant on cars, a viable mass transit system is key to all of that. And I'm afraid we're at an inflection point from a combination of the pandemic changing transportation habits and the T's fiscal woes that will affect non-peak service that we see on the T. But I maybe just be picking a little paranoid. That's it.
Talking to the fire department, they've been doing a lot of mutual aid stuff lately, and it was a very, very busy November for them. Also talking to Chief Landry, I think I'd mentioned before that after one of the prior windstorms in the fall, they did an after-action report where they got together police, fire, highway, as well as Hudson Light and Power, and Chief Landry and Steve Nadeau both said when I talked to them that it was very helpful. They got great service out of Hudson Light and Power today, or during this past storm, and so things are good. Highway's still cleaning stuff up, cleaning pieces of trees off the roads and fixing equipment that got beat up over the last storm. And I'd like to say happy 1 year anniversary for Steve Nadeau. He started a year ago in December, and he was called in a day. Last year he was called in a day early from when he was supposed to start because it started to snow. So, then last thing is I was talking to Acting Chief Salisi, and he said everything is going well right now. One of the things he's actually looking at trying to do is, because knowing COVID's going to be lasting for a while, he's looking at the possibility of maybe doing a Citizens Police Academy and trying to do it over Zoom. Try to do something different and see if that works out. And Board of Health meets this Thursday. So that's all I've got. We've got one set of minutes, and I'm not going to try to weasel out of those this week. We have minutes from November 24th, 2020. Do we have any comments or corrections?
I sent an email to the selectmen's email, so I wasn't sure where it was going. Just that under your report, it actually said that Representative Hogan was the one trying to lead the lower village conversation. I want to make sure that was very clearly Senator Eldridge was the one doing that. So, but that was the only correction.
And I will just comment, over the last week, we have identified a number of minutes from the last year that have not been completed. So Phoebe went through the agendas and matched them up with minutes and subsequent meetings, and I think we've identified, there's probably 8 or 9 meetings that have not had minutes approved.
Because you just kept skipping.
So we are working on that, so hopefully at your January meeting, you'll have a stack, and then hopefully shortly thereafter, if not by then. I will just make mention for the record that Kathy Safara has offered to do the minutes for these meetings. I will tell you, I put an email out to all employees and only 2 department heads volunteered. So Tina at the library and Kathy. So Kathy will do the minutes. I may have Tina do some of the catch up on the older minutes, but you will see, it goes back to February, to be honest with you. So you will see some minutes back to February on your next or upcoming agendas.
All right. And when you say volunteered, I assume they're going to get paid.
They are, so it's just a small amount per meeting, but I did ask for anyone who wanted to step up for, it's $100 per meeting, and they were the only two that said yes.
Megan, Courtney, have any comments on the minutes? No? No? Jim?
Nope.
I'm
good.
Well, I'm good with them. I'm willing to accept the motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll move the minutes of November 24, 2020 as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Courtney and Megan are both ayes.
Before we adjourn, I had one question. It was another thing I had sent an email about, and I didn't ask to explicitly put it on the agenda, but in light of the decision that came down around our former police chief, and I did confirm that we basically have no say in it because it was brought by the district attorney, but I was pretty horrified by the decision, and I had hoped to have it on the agenda to say, you know, can we write a letter or a press release to basically state our concern that he was let off totally easily. That the whole decision by the judge saying it should be held to a higher standard, and then he let him off with basically a finding, which. So anyway, I wanted to just say that publicly because I know a lot of people have been talking about it since it was reported in the paper last week, and I'm sorry I didn't bring it up sooner, but I don't know if it's appropriate, but I did feel like the Board of Selectmen should comment on it at the very least, to, if nothing else, to clarify, which I got from Denise, that because it was a case brought by the district attorney, we're not a plaintiff, we're not the, whatever you call it.
Aggrieved?
We were aggrieved, but we didn't take the case, so, and then in terms of the pension, we also don't have a say in that, which I find, it's one of those decisions that absolutely makes me crazy, that we're stuck paying on a pension for someone who absolutely, on so many levels, you know, broke our confidence and broke the law. So, anyway, I've said now what I meant to.
I think questions along those lines should be directed to the town administrator, who can prepare a response that covers what she sees as, you know, the common themes to the questions, and possibly post it to the website. That's what we did right after the scandal.
Mm-hmm.
And that seemed to, I don't think a press release is, well, I don't think that much different than what I just suggested. And I actually think something on the website would have more. I personally am not going to get involved in commenting on the judicial action.
Okay.
But the pension thing certainly needs clarification. I thank the chair of the Middlesex board, because he said that to our newspaper, that we have no responsibility.
Right.
But I think if we can direct any comments, questions like that to the town administrator, she can collect that.
Okay.
And I think there will be common themes that are appropriate to respond to,
Okay.
and prepare something. You know, obviously, possibly with our input if necessary, at a later meeting. That would be my suggestion.
Okay.
And the last thing we had on here was correspondence. Anybody have anything they want to talk about in there? Megan?
I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the letter from the Bolton Board of Selectmen. The letter that they sent out to the school committee. Again, I feel like I'm in a position where I just don't want to be in the middle of this. Like, I don't know. Can you guys hear me? You're making
Yep.
faces. Okay. So I question why only 3 of their board members signed this letter.
They only have.
They only have 3.
Oh, they only have 3. Oh, okay, all right. Well, that's not a question then anymore. Thank you for the clarification. That makes sense. So, yeah, I don't know. I just feel like I I just want to acknowledge the fact that we have seen this letter, that's gone out to the school committee, and, that's all. I just wanted to recognize that we.
Yep, we've seen it.
Yep.
Courtney, anything? Nope. Ellen, Jim?
Okay.
In that case, I am willing to accept a motion.
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right.
Happy
Any
holidays.
discussion, like happy holidays?
Happy holidays.
Please be safe, everybody. Have a wonderful holiday season, and good to go. In that case, all in favor?
Aye.
I
And it's unanimous. Courtney and Megan are yes.
All right.
So thank you all for attending, and have a see you in 2021.